Now, here's Marc Daniels and Jerry Greene.
Second hour of our program on this Wednesday. Thanks for joining us on the Beat of Sports. Marc Daniels and Jerry Greene. Glad you're aboard on the radio at ESPN 1080 or on the stream at thebeatofsports.com or at ESPNFlorida.com. Back in August, our next guest joined us. Sean Pamphilon did the amazing documentary, directed the Run Ricky Run piece. It was an ESPN 30 and 30. It was a great piece and got tremendous praise, and rightfully so. And Sean joined us when we spoke about Brandon Marshall's situation and dealing with what he does off the field and some of the demons that he's battled with. And when the news came out yesterday that Ricky Williams had formally retired, reached out to Sean to ask him to come on, and he's going to talk to us about Ricky and also a new project that he's working on, which is pretty powerful as well. Sean, thanks for joining us. How are you?
How you guys doing?
Doing really good. When you learned that Ricky Williams was retiring, what's the first thing you thought of?
It's about time. Seriously, it's about time. I mean, there's only so much punishment your body can take, and I think we're becoming more and more aware about the trauma players are receiving in their head. So I think someone who's played a position of running back for as long as he has, and linebacker before that, I think it's a good move for him to stop now, keep his faculties as much intact as possible, and move on with the rest of his life, because he's obviously got eclectic interests, and I'm sure there's a future for him and something that's really interesting.
1 year from now and 5 years from now, what do you think Ricky Williams is?
1 year from now, I think he's probably doing a lot of the stuff he's done the last few years, concentrating on his mental and physical health, helping others. 5 years from now, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, I would never try to, figure out what Ricky's going to do 5 years from now. I think he has no idea what he's going to do 5 years from now. But I would guarantee it's going to be interesting.
Of the time that you spent shooting the documentary, and even today, what do you still not know about Ricky Williams?
I don't know. If I knew it, I would know it, right?
No, but what still, what frustrates you in the sense that I wish I could have gotten that out of him, that you look back now and still say, I wish I could have broken that door down to get a little bit more?
Well, I think one of the things I've found pretty consistent in my dealings with football players is that they're type A personalities and they're driven by internal forces. So, I have this theory that Ricky had gone out, and the way he played football was just a way of proving his manhood. I think that if you look at someone like Walter Payton, another person who was soft-spoken, probably might have been made fun of for the way he spoke. But when he played football, no one made fun of him. And I think that it would have been interesting to get to a deeper layer on that. I don't know if he was ready for that yet. I mean, maybe that's a conversation we have in the future. But that would be the underlying thing that I would really want to know. Like, why did you really play?
Sean, I read the Ricky Williams blog as to his statement for talking a little bit about both his past and his future. And early in it, there is this sentence: "The way I see it, our dreams, like everything else in this reality, are composed of two things, essence and matter, similar to the idea of soul and body." Well, I could spend another hour looking at that, and I don't know if I would understand what that sentence means. In your opinion, did Ricky write that himself? Does he actually think that at that level?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. There's no way. I mean, you can listen to him and look at some of the things that would be printed out, and you could compare that to, I guess, the DNA handwriting, whatever, of any PR person in the business, and it would only have Ricky's fingerprints on it. I mean, there's nobody who speaks for him on that level, and that level is probably a little too deep for me, so I need him to explain it to me, as usual. But yeah, that's definitely all him.
I don't know how to judge who he is as a person and whether or not he's as good a person as he could have been. I don't know how to judge that. In your opinion, was he as good a football player as he could have been? Yeah, I mean, I think he was as good a football player as he could have been. Was he as productive as he could have been? Probably not. I had a conversation with a friend of mine the other day before I even found out about this, and we were both talking about it. And,
Ricky was still averaging over 4 yards a carry. And if Ray Rice went down, he would have been able to produce, I think, much along the same lines he did when Ronnie Brown went down in 2009. So, I mean, he didn't want it. He didn't want to be that guy anymore. So he wasn't attached to, a bunch of more 1,000-yard seasons. He wanted to basically, when he left the first time, he left his career in shambles, financial disarray. So he came back, and he took a smart approach. He was very professional, did his job, made his money back, helped set his family up, nowhere near what it could have been if he had never left. But he did the right thing, and he wasn't attached. I mean, when he was in Miami, there were literally times when he and Ronnie were switching off, when he would get down within the 5 or 10 yard line, and Ricky would just let him have it. He'd take himself out of the game and basically give Ronnie Brown touchdowns.
Why?
That happened because he was being unselfish. I mean, the time at the ashram was a time where he was really diligently working on killing his ego. And also, he wanted Ronnie to make the Pro Bowl, I believe, which he did that year because he got 10 touchdowns. I mean, he's a really good teammate in that way, and did a lot of things that people just have no idea about. But that's something he did do because he wasn't attached to the numbers. I know that 10,000 yards was something that he wanted just because it was a round number and suggested something more. So, when he got over 10,000. I wasn't surprised he stopped at all. And I was actually telling him, I texted him. I said, I hope that you get your 10,000 yards. I hope you get your just due for your perseverance. And I hope you go to the Super Bowl and lose to the Saints.
John Pamphilon is with us, the award-winning director who did the Run Ricky Run piece, the great ESPN documentary. And let's make a transition there because you're working on a new project. Those that saw the Super Bowl pregame show may have seen the piece that Peter King did on Steve Gleason, who played for the Saints, was part of that special Saint team that helped revive that city when they came back after Katrina, and now is battling Lou Gehrig's disease. Tell us about the project.
Well, I was last January, about a little over a year ago, I was driving from Boston to Hartford with another friend of mine, a former football player who was suffering from head trauma, and we were getting him looked at. And Scott Vegeta had forwarded an email to my friend about Steve Gleason, who I peripherally remembered because of the punt, because of that Monday night game, because you two playing that game. So I remembered him, but the email really struck me. He had just found out that he was diagnosed, and he was conveying it to his friends. And it emotionally shook me and got me upset. And so I reached out to him. I wanted to meet him, and I wanted to talk to him about a project I'm doing. I'm actually in post-production now on, called Flyin Helmets. It's sort of a sociological examination of football, PV to the pros, and also the cause and effect of playing football from a health and safety standpoint. Because I've got a 13-year-old son who's got like these little Wes Welker hands before that drop the other day. And so I'm making that conscious choice that a lot of parents are, do I want to let my kid play football? So I've been looking through all these things, and I wanted to talk to Steve about being part of that film. But when I went to New Orleans and spent a day with he and his wife, it was clear that Steve Gleason shouldn't be part of anything other than his own thing. And during the course of our conversation, the next day we were out and just talking, and he was saying something really deep in his car, and I said, would you mind if I shoot this? I just turned my iPhone on, and then we went from there. And we just started making a film. I mean, I talked to him about that when his wife was pregnant, and I talked to him about when my oldest son was first born. I had these strange premonitions that what would I do if I passed away before he could remember me. So I started doing journals and video journals, giving him advice about life, telling him my path, the mistakes I made, the things I would like to correct if I had better advice. And, so Steve and I were talking about that, and it resonated with him. So ultimately we're doing two things. We're building a library, or three things really. We're building a library of footage for his son, Rivers, who was born in October. And we're also making a movie about it. So it's really been an amazing experience. I was actually there on Sunday, and I was right behind the NBC camera as Steve was coming onto the field, shooting behind the scenes. And it's been the most amazing thing I've ever been associated with. And he is a powerful, very, very courageous man.
A will to live and a will to fight. With his story, I mean, and you were kind enough to send me a little clip to look last night, and then I saw the piece on Sunday. And it's so difficult for us, I think, sometimes to understand not just the physical struggles, but the mental battle to keep on fighting. I mean, he knows what lies ahead, and yet he still wants to do so much to help people. I would imagine it's incredibly powerful when you're around him.
Yeah, it's very, very uplifting. I mean, I spent 4 days with him in Indianapolis. And it's a combination of he and Michelle, his wife, being truly, truly inspiring people, and the fact that he's got a huge support system. Most ALS patients have nowhere near the support and love that Steve has around him, and that gives him a huge amount of energy and passion and drive. And he's just taking the same characteristics he had that allowed him to play in the National Football League for 8 years. He's translating those into the same energy and approach to fighting this disease, to creating awareness, and to staying present in the moment and enjoying everything he can with his life. And one of the things that I'm doing with him, I mean, he's going to learn how to edit video with his eyeballs. I mean, it's going to be the way he's going to be able to communicate through his eyeballs. There's a lot of technology that allows you to do that. And we're co-directing this film together. He's very talented, very creative. And one of my sort of charges in my life at this point is to teach him some of what I know so he can, have a productive skill that he's excited about, that beyond his family he has a reason to live. And, I'm very serious about that. And, I love him very much. He's an incredible human being, and I think that as people get more and more exposed to him, I think he's going to inspire very, very many people.
Sean, I get the impression that Mr. Gleason thinks that maybe playing football has some connection with this disease, but that because of his love of football, he doesn't see that as the important role to play, as talking about that. He just sees talking about the disease itself and fighting it. Am I correct on that?
I think the best way to put it is there's a lot of dialogue and a lot of noise about this issue. Some of it accurate, some of it inaccurate. And Steve's very well aware of the numbers. He knows that NFL players, are 8 times more likely to get ALS than the general population. He knows those numbers. But what he doesn't really want to do is he doesn't want to be thrown into that dialogue, and that's what everything comes back to. People will look at it and go, "Oh, Steve played football, poor guy, look at what happened to him." That's not what he wants. I mean, I think one of the reasons why he refuses to attribute it to it is he can't prove it, one. And two, if you look at all the things in his life that have meaning, first and foremost, family and friends, New Orleans, all those things came about because he played football. It put him in environs that allowed him to meet these people. So if Steve said, "I wish I didn't play football," he wouldn't have met the love of his life. He wouldn't, had a region fall in love with him. He wouldn't have all this support. And he could have been a guy who got ALS even if he never played. And in that situation, he said, "I could have been a 34-year-old accountant or architect," which is what he wanted to be, and still get this. So I think Steve's thing is he wants to remain positive, not play the blame game, and make everything out of his life that he possibly can. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
You worked on a lot of projects. You're a storyteller by trade, and yet it sounds as if this has had a major impact on you. How has this changed you?
I mean, if you are around Steve and Michelle, there's a certain magic that happens between the two of them. And I think anybody who's around them, it makes you examine your own relationships, and it makes you want to be a better person. So I would say that, and I get very intimately involved with the people that I tell stories about. I stay in their houses. I become part of their circle, part of their family, and I ultimately love them very much. So I break the rules. I was a journalist in mainstream corporate America for a long time. I worked at pretty much all the major networks and ESPN and all those places and HBO. But there was a level of coldness to it that I couldn't, that I just couldn't deal with it. I wanted to go deeper. And fortunately, I've met some people who have been willing to share their stories with me. I'm actually in Canton, Ohio right now because I've been following a high school team there for the better part of 15 months. So in the past 2 years, I've really been shooting 3 different films. And I'm going to get done with this one. I might shoot this one for another year, but I'll be done with my Flyin Helmets one probably within the next 3 months.
So what's the status? Give me the update as far as the piece with Steve. When might we see that?
Well, we're going to finish shooting principal photography probably in May at the Jazz Fest because we want to end the film on a really positive, cool note. He's got a bunch of his friends who are going to be coming out from all over the country for Jazz Fest. And also there's a local custom called the Jazz Fest Triathlon where, New Orleans has got a lot of tradition. So people will throw back a few beers, do a bike race, do a run around the track at the Jazz Fest, and then swim across the bayou. It's a local tradition that Steve's had with a lot of his friends for the better part of, a decade. And so we're gonna finish it there, and then we'll edit probably through either September or through December, depending on how it progresses. And we want to try to get it done by the Sundance Film Festival, which has submissions in September, but if not, maybe South by Southwest in December.
Good stuff. Hey, Sean, thanks so much for the time. Best of luck with the project. We look forward to talking to you down the line. Really appreciate it.
I really appreciate you guys giving me the time, and have a great day.
Thanks. Sean Pamphilon, who did the great piece on Run, Ricky, Run, and he was kind enough to send me a 4-minute clip of this Steve Gleason piece. I shared it with you.
That's
it's
right.
Really powerful stuff, and he's a storyteller, and as you can tell, stuff impacts him, and good stuff. We'll come back. More to get to. Be the Sports, ESPN 1080 The Team.